Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, say this is the morning podcast with Jacob and Ethan.
This is hell.
I write my own music and I played around Prague a bit. I would consider myself quite the amateur. But I write songs almost as a form of therapy for myself, which is why they're all sad. But I'm not necessarily a sad person. People think I'm a sad person,
You're a sad person. You're quite lively.
but my songs tend to be quite sad.
I mean, compared to what? I just sent some girl I went on a date with last night. Like, she was like, "Send me this story," because I was telling her, I felt like I made a really good story this fall, and I was reading it through this morning. It's basically this like Kafka light just swirl down into despair.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know how to, I don't want to run or describe the story, but it was like, how am I sending this to somebody as like is this like romantic for her to read my like cry of despair?
The way I see it is that negative emotions or like sadness is very relatable. That's why it pays to be vulnerable with people, because people look at your lowest moments and they go like, I've been there too. I understand what that means, and I see you as a complete human being. Some people think that you have to be like, oh, I'm amazing all the time, and nobody likes that kind of person, because it's
No.
really hard to relate to the highs. It's
No.
much easier to relate to the lows.
It's what makes Facebook. Well, Facebook has gotten better with this, but when Facebook was young, like maybe 5-6 years ago, I feel like this was a problem. It's like you would get on Facebook, and I have everybody on mute, so maybe it's still like this, but you would get on, and then you would just feel awful because you would see everybody is just like living the best life, and you're like, oh, I'm just sitting in my apartment on Facebook. So no, I think like part of the other reason sadness is a good thing and that people relate to it is I think everybody describes themselves as like, oh, outwardly everybody thinks I'm so happy, but inwardly I'm so sad. So like,
I think none of us are that special. So
no. I think people treat their sadness as a kind of like they feel special in their sadness and their unhappiness. But it's
and to me, for my songwriting, it's all about I've been playing guitar for about 15, 16 years now.
Yeah.
Since I was at school, high school. And I was trying to write songs all this time. And my lyrics, they were always terrible. Like, I would read them again and be like, oh, what is this? And then finally, when I started, experiencing life and having strong emotions of any kind, then when you translate that emotion into a song, like, then you can transmit something to the audience. In some ways, maybe it's a bit mean, but if somebody cries when I sing them a song, I think that's kind of a job well done, or give them goosebumps or something, just to like, I'm not, there's obviously a place for like party music and happy music. I'm not saying that that's not, useful or interesting. It's just that's not what comes out of me. And so if someone comes up to me after the show and goes like, they gave me goosebumps, I'm like, well, I'm glad, because it makes you, I think it makes you feel alive. That's the thing, It doesn't make you feel like you're just part of the audience and just listening to someone. It makes you feel like somebody understands you. It makes you feel like trigger some memories or some emotions, and that you can process maybe. I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, I think if you can give somebody goosebumps, you've done it right. Like one of my earliest live music memories is, do you need something to put that tea bag in, by the way?
No, it's fine.
Okay. I was at my cousin's high school, and this classmate of his did Fast Car, by Tracy Chapman.
Sure.
And she did it. They had like this, basically the choir class. They did like a concert for the whole town. So every year, like everybody would prepare one song, and it was just her with an acoustic guitar and a guy with a shaker. Mm-hmm. But homegirl had a beautiful voice, and she just knew the song frontwards to backwards. And I swear to God, I had an out of body experience watching her play Fast Car. Like, I don't even know. I was transfixed. Like, it was literally magic. And yeah, if you could do that to somebody else, I don't know that. I don't have your voice, and I probably like need to take proper voice lessons. But I think having a great voice like you have is part of that. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it's about having a great voice. It's more about being able to kind of feel the emotion of the song, and that kind of comes out
That too, yeah.
of the voice, you know? Like
And
a
the
lot,
good
a lot
songwriting
of
and-
fantastic singers that have a lot of emotion in their voice are quote-unquote terrible singers. Like one of my favorite singers is, songwriters is John Prine, and he was not a
Yeah.
very good singer,
Yeah.
especially after, his foot cancer surgery in the late 90s and so on. Like, but he would just give you so much just because, you could tell that the people he sings about in his songs are, even if they're fictional, he cares about them, right? It's not just like, oh, look at the poor people or look at the old people,
Yeah.
It's like, old people just get lonesome, and for him that was kind of important, and that's what I aim to be. I don't think I'm ever going to be such a good songwriter as John Prine, but
there might only be
who
like
is?
10 or 20 people who are, yeah. No, that's a fair point. Like, if you went and heard him play Sam Stone and just like, because you know how he started, right?
Yeah.
So, like, he just, like, his friends made him do an open mic.
Yeah.
Or he was at an open mic. I'll say it for the benefit of the listeners, but he was at an open mic. He would go to open mics and he was writing songs. Eventually, he was like, these people suck.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go do my songs. And then, like, the entire room went silent when he finished. I mean, because he had, though, like, some of the best songs ever written, fully formed. And it's just this random guy in the crowd.
And he was like 27 when the first album came out, or
Yeah.
something along those lines. And he was working as a postman. And he had time between deliveries to think about the people he met while he was delivering post, And I usually cover one of his songs, "Hello in There," which is again it's about
Yeah.
old people being lonesome, and it's such a wise take on the thing when you're just that young. And one of his biggest fans and friends was Roger Waters from Pink Floyd.
Oh, I did not know this.
When he would complain about he found Radiohead boring. He would much rather listen to John Prine because he would give him some emotions. But and you think of Pink Floyd and you think of all like the progressive stuff and the guitar solos, but the lyrics that Roger Waters wrote from some of those albums were super precocious. Like there's that song "Time" on Dark Side of the Moon, which he wrote, I think he was 28, 29. And it's just about growing old and time passing,
Yeah.
and like the sun is the same in a relative way, but you're older. And like,
Yeah.
dude, come on, really? So after you look at that, you go, okay, I understand why Roger Waters likes John Prine, And
Yeah, I can see that. And that first album of John Prine's too is maybe just one of the wisest albums. It's
probably his best as well.
It is probably his best. He really did peak. It's sad.
Well, I mean, he had a lot of good stuff afterwards, but still, I think that one is just such a classic. And he was really afraid of it because he thought his voice sucked. He had to go to a recording studio and record songs when he felt like he was just learning how to sing.
Yeah.
So I think no one's happy with their voice, Jacob. So
No, I don't think. And do you know who Will Oldham is? Or he goes by Bonnie Prince Billy a lot.
maybe.
He's like kind of on the American lo-fi circuit. And he's a singer-songwriter out of Kentucky. And his most famous album is called I See a Darkness. But okay, if this guy can make good music while sounding like he does. Because he was like a child actor. Mm-hmm. And then he decided he didn't want to be a child actor. So then he just started writing songs. And he somehow got signed to Drag City. Like, he sent him a few demos back in the 90s when I guess, anybody could get signed. And like, sure, we'll sign you. And then he just like puts out 2 albums a year of amazing songwriting. Like, in my opinion, like the best songwriters of like 1990 or since Kurt Cobain's death. Like, I feel like it's either Will Oldham or Lana Del Rey, I think, are the 2 best since then, in my opinion, who have been great since the mid 90s. So he's worth listening to. But anyway, his voice is like a frog croaking.
Sure.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And he intentionally he plays into it, so he just starts yelping and he just starts barking on some songs. It's quite funny.
Well, I think one of the things that comes to mind is I guess it's changing a little bit now, but it's the idea that the general public has of what quote unquote good singing is, which is going on The Voice, or Michael Bublé, or someone who's like auto-tuned so much where like all of the emotion is lost from the voice and it's quote unquote technically really good.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal now. I don't like Adele. I think she's extremely boring. Her songs are extremely boring. But there was a big deal where it's like, her stuff, I don't know about the old stuff, but this stuff that just came out is not auto-tuned, and people are like losing their mind, like, oh, she's so flat there, and like it works because the human voice is not a precise instrument, and being flat gives you, or sharp or whatever, gives you emotion, like in the moment, like that's how you feel like singing it. Like it's kind of weird to like make the voice conform to like this kind of equal temperament system that we have, where it's like, it's very mathematically described so you can play in any key, but the voice just does what it wants, and if it sounds good, it sounds good. But then people pull out autotune or whatever they want to pull out, Melodyne stuff, and then you can see the voice on the line, and you go, oh, that's not on the right note, instead of using your ears. And I think it kind of, I think in some ways that killed rock music as well, because it got extremely boring. A quantization of time also made rock music extremely boring. Like you hear some songs, like you hear the Police, and like their time is all over the place. Mm-hmm. Like they would finish and they would be really fast, and then they would start the verse again, and it would be way slower, and you're like, okay. There's another song which I like a lot. I don't know if you know a band called Big Star.
Oh, of course.
So I cover 13, which is probably their best song, and I learned the song off the record, and then I went to play it when I was going to singing school, and my teacher was like, "Why are you speeding up so much?" I go, "What do you mean?" And then you listen to the record, and you speed up loads. It is so much faster by the end of it. That if you play it straight, it's boring. Right, because it speeds up and it kind of gets more like the emotion,
especially when it
goes higher, right?
When he does that chord change, not da 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 da, like da 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 da. Like during that part, he definitely speeds up each time he delivers it too.
Yeah. So
and it adds to the energy of the song. It propels it forward.
Yeah, and even the best musicians live, they tend to speed up. Sometimes not by mistake, but like they want to speed up.
But people don't. So I think two things. One, the early Stones are great for this too. Is that I love listening to those classic Stones records because it's like they always speed up because they're just all playing live, and they're usually they were playing into like a cheap tape recorder. Like they weren't even playing really into pro equipment. But I don't think people realize it's like the way music is made now. You do each instrument separately, so nobody ever plays together. And then the drum player has a click track, so they have a metronome in their ears. And then they do like a snap to grid. So it takes any part of the drumming that's not in time and makes it in time. And then you go in and individual guitar notes and individual singing notes. And it's not the same as auto-tune, but they will manually change individual notes if they're a little bit out of key.
Yeah.
Which I don't like it. I think it does take a lot of energy, and I think it's like if you're complaining about Adele's singing, like you've got something wrong. Like she's quite an impressive singer. It's not like a math quiz in school to where like there's a right and a wrong answer. But I do think there's a flip side of it where it is nice in pop music that we've come to tolerate more weirdness. And I feel like kind of starting with Lady Gaga, it feels like all the pop stars before that were this, I'm just a pretty person who sings nice, Mm-hmm. And ever since Lady Gaga, like we don't tolerate pop stars who aren't a little bit weird. So that's kind of, I think, changed for the better.
I mean, here's where I admit, like, to be honest with you, I don't really listen to a lot of pop music. It's not on my radar. When I was a teenager, I had an older sister, so all I got was pop music. And ever since, I don't live with her anymore. I kind of stopped listening to pop music, because these days you can find anything you want online from any genre. There's a kind of a big fragmentation of there used to be kind of almost a monoculture before, where it's like the radio is passing this, the record shop only have the records that they get distributed by the big distributors, and TV and so on. And so like this is the pop music and everybody knows the songs. And now there's kind of a much larger fragmentation where you have, people who only listen to grindcore or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Which didn't really happen before as much. Obviously, you could, but you really have to you find friends who had tapes or like
Right.
or like you would find a weird little niche shop that you had to drive to a different town where they would have these independent label records of weird stuff. Well, now you can find that weird stuff everywhere, and that's kind of feels to me like it always feels like it's made the mainstream pop music kind of boring, kind of generic. But I'm not sure if that's true because history always cleanses the bad stuff. Like if you go look at the 70s and go look at what are
Yeah.
actually popular, there's a lot of disco records that nobody listens to anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody. Like the good ones, still there, Chic and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the bad stuff kind of gets washed away by history. And I think it's going to happen, exactly the same thing is going to happen right now, where only like the things that are worth remembering stay. But in the moment, it feels like it's a sea of garbage. But that's just kind of how, I guess, history works, right?
If you want like a special dose of humility, one of the best things you can do is go look at the list of bestsellers by year, like the last 100 years, the best-selling novels.
Oh, yeah.
And you know none of them.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you're like, oh, I'll hear of some of them. None.
No.
You've heard of none of these books, and it's not like you haven't heard of them because they're classics and they're literature. No, like nobody reads them. Nobody cares. And so I think you're right. I think there's winnowing because for example, I think I've come to believe that Taylor Swift's a freaking genius.
Okay.
I've come to believe that like old school Timberland, like Timberland in the 2000 to 2010, I love that music. Olivia Rodrigo right now, I love her. So I do think there's good things made in pop music,
Sure.
but there's definitely like good things made in there's just in the context of a lot of bad. But how do you, by the way, I saw you smirk. How do you feel about Tay Tay?
I haven't really listened to much
can't do
of
it, okay.
her music. A little bit here and there. I have listened to a bit of Olivia Rodrigo since you mentioned her,
Yeah.
and that driving license song is pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. The rest of the stuff is not as interesting, I feel, as that one.
I
But
thought Good For
she-
You was good, and
See, you say that like, and I don't remember which one that is because
Good
kind
For
of,
You. I can't get that fucking high. And then there's the Deja Vu.
again, it maybe
okay.
I probably listened to it, but I just don't
You
remember.
just- What are you listening to these days?
That's a good question. I don't know. Actually, I've been listening to a lot of Bruce Springsteen because I was trying to maybe do a cover of "I'm on Fire" because it kind of feels like that's my jam.
Do you know the Chromatics version of it?
I do not know the Chromatics version of it.
Do you know who Chromatics are?
I have the name rings familiar, but
They're like a Italo disco. I mean, they just broke up like a month or two ago, but they did a lot of good music in the last 5 years.
okay.
But they did a cover of "I'm on Fire," and it's basically like a singer-songwriter version of it. But it's worth looking into if you're looking for like ideas on how to cover it. Yeah, it's really good. What era of Springsteen? Like the Born in the USA or Nebraska?
Well, I was
or-
listening to Born USA because that's what
That's
that
where it's
song-
off
that's,
of,
That's
yeah,
what the
yeah.
song is. But I like Nebraska a lot. I think that's my favorite
I love
album
Nebraska.
of his. It's just a lot more raw and up close and personal than. Well, that's not true. Springsteen always sings about personal things, and sometimes not. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like if you ask me what you're listening to, I can't remember.
No, I understand.
No, but honestly, like I found I haven't been listening to much music these days because I'm usually just listening to myself play guitar a lot, and then I'm just done, with it. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just go on Discover Weekly on Spotify, and you find things that are interesting, and you discover things you didn't know. Spotify is very bad in many ways, especially in terms of how much
terms of
money
pay,
people
yeah.
make. But
Do you have anything on Spotify?
I don't have any recordings now.
No. Have you done any?
Well, we once cut a song in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. 'Cause
Okay.
I was living in
Yeah.
Zanzibar, and we wrote a song, and then we went to a producer there in Dar es Salaam on the mainland. His name was Nice P.
Nice.
Nice P.
Nice P.
Like P, like just the letter P.
Yeah.
Which is. But they were kind of like they were a bit, They were making fun of us in a way because we asked them like, hey, do you have a drum kit or electric guitar? And we showed up, and the electric guitar had 2 strings on it, And you go, aha.
Oh.
And so we recorded 2 songs there, and then we paid him for him to mix it and stuff, and he never did. And we had to like email him 100 times to get the stems and stuff. And then I mixed it, and he did a pretty poor job of it. It wasn't a very good song. Just pointing it out. This was like over 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting experience to be in a studio and kind of do that for half a day.
Yeah.
But no, of my songs that I think are actually good, I haven't recorded any of them.
I mean, you could just rent a practice room for a few hours one day and, just record you and guitar and maybe somebody on some kind of accompaniment. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you actually want to give it the full proper studio treatment if you're going to do it.
I think, I was just thinking about this when we were talking about the Bruce Springsteen song, which is, I'm not a big covers guy, like especially, I never play covers that people actually know.
I can tell that sun's in your fucking eyes.
Give me a second. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I actually cannot see, so that. There you go.
Is that better?
That is significantly. Well, okay. I'm just gonna move slightly to the right. Oh no! What a shame, the sun. At least it's sunny,
No, dude. We work with people at my job. I'm working right now. I work with people out of the Ukraine, and they're like, "Yeah, it's cold. The heat in my building doesn't work.
Fun.
My baby's crying." So I'll take annoyingly sunny anytime.
On that note, so Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
No, the thing I found is when you're learning a new song, whether it's your own or someone else's song, it takes a lot of repetitions to kind of get your interpretation of the song to a place where you're happy with it, and not just by yourself, even in public. Because sometimes you play a song and then people go like, yeah, but then sometimes you play a song and people like cry. So that's when, like I said before, that's one of my my goals is to give, not necessarily make people cry, but have people have an emotional response to my song. And that's kind of how I feel about recording songs, where I'm not sure if I have any with which I would just be happy with just a recording right now in this moment. Maybe a couple, but.
Okay, no, that's a fair point.
And also the other option, the other thing is like, yeah, I mean, I can record a demo, just me and the guitar and some little accompaniment or whatever, but I haven't yet figured out what I would like to do in terms of arrangement.
Okay.
Like how would an album, how would a recorded song come out? I don't know, because I'm so used to playing by myself, whether it's songwriting or playing to people at concerts.
Yeah.
Where I kind of have to do the whole accompaniment by myself, right? Mm-hmm. So, I play whole chords. You play the root note on the guitar because, unless you really don't want to because it's the color you want to give to the chord, sure.
Yeah.
But in general, I don't have a bass player, I don't have a keyboard player, so there's no one else to lay down the bass notes. So you have to kind of play the whole chord. You can't just play, upper register arpeggios on the guitar. And so the question then becomes like, how do I translate this song that I've written accompanied by guitar or the piano into something that has multiple band members who, if they all played what I've been playing, then it would sound like crap because everyone's overlapping each other.
Yeah. Well, that's what mixing's for. Because, I mean, you can play whole chords on the guitar, but then you can do a cut at because the low E's, I think, at 80 hertz, and you can cut it at 120. And so you're not going to get, all the bass notes are going to come, whatever you want the bass to be from, you can make the bass come from in the mix.
Or you could just not play them.
Or you could just not play it, right? But that's a lot, because you're gonna essentially reteach yourself how to play your own song. So, it's better for your mixer, for your engineer, but
yeah. And again, that I think at some level I just have to, much like at some point you realize that you just have to go and play your songs no matter how crap they are because you just have to get that experience. At some level you have to bite the bullet and just go and record something and just accept that that's going to be a thing, then that's done, and then maybe you don't like it and you never release it, and maybe you think it's fine. I think, people hate George Lucas for many reasons, but one of them is because he won't leave the movies alone.
Right.
And I think everyone who makes things kind of has that instinct. And the question is, how do you tame it, and how do you stop yourself from going back and redoing things over and over again? Because there's plenty of songwriters who, hate the way that some of their songs have been recorded, but people know the songs from that recording, so you can re-record it, but nobody's gonna care because that's it. Like that's kind of a monolithic. It's there, and and it's not going anywhere. So I guess it's kind of, to me, that's kind of scary, because you write something and you go, oh, I wish I'd sang that so much better, or I wish I played that differently, and you can never really go back and change it. I mean, again, this obviously implies that somebody's going to listen to it in the first place, which is not
People
which is
will
not
listen to your music.
guaranteed.
Come on, people love you. People love your music. You always have like a freaking a pack of 6 people follow you around every open mic. I mean, that's a good sign, man.
I guess so.
I think because what I did something during the pandemic, during the lockdown. I recorded because I had a bunch of songs written, and I was just writing them for fun. I wasn't even doing open mics with them. And then lockdown happened, so I said, well, I'm just gonna I just used this baby's internal mic, this computer's internal mic, and I just recorded everything straight to the internal mic. Which, talk about mixing, was nightmare.
Sure.
But honestly, did the first product come out great? Not really. I mean, there's moments that I'm happy with, and there's some moments I'm like, man, I messed it up. But I guess for me, I view it not as, I try not to hold if it's anything I make. I've written a song, even a podcast episode. I try not to hold on to it. I try to say, I'm going to make it, and if there's something I wish I did, then I will do something else, but I will do it better. Because it's like, I just try not to be too precious with anything I make. It's just like, it's hard, but I've started to treat it all as disposable. I can always do it again. Like, I've come to have the belief that if I did it well once before, I can and will do it better in the future. So I believe that, like, maybe there's some song and I love this song, but I don't get the right recording for it. I record it, and then I can write another song and do it better. Or who knows? 10 years in the future, I'll get a jazz band together, and we'll do a completely different arrangement of it. Fuck, I'll record it 5 times. Like, who says you can't? You know, which has been weirdly freeing. Like, starting to treat your own work as disposable is a freeing thing when you're making art. For me, at least, it has. been.
I agree, and that's the way I feel about songwriting. Where at some point a song is just done, and I always have in the back of my mind, like, oh, maybe I want to change this line, and then at some point you just never do. Sometimes you really do, because sometimes something just really grates you the wrong way, and then you go like, okay, I have to change this.
I know this.
And then like sometimes something new comes up, and you replace the line or the verse or whatever. But yeah, I think that's true of anything you make. Where say you want to make chairs. If you spend your life trying to make a really good chair, the chair will suck. But if you make 1,000 chairs, then the 1,001st chair will probably be pretty good, because you've had the experience of learning from all those, not as good attempts. And I think we all as humans have a fear of failing, especially in front of people.
Yeah.
Which stops us from failing, which is how you learn.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier before the podcast about jam sessions, and those people who are afraid to go onto a jam session because what if they're not very good? And the reality is that no one is very good at the beginning. Yeah. And you have to go on stage, and you have to feel the feeling where, like, it's really awkward, and all the other people on stage are looking at you, and you're looking at them, and you're like, I'm trying.
Right.
And then you do that enough times where you stop caring, and you finally you relax, and then you actually are able to get into the groove and play well or whatever it is.
Yeah. Do you know Flo, who lives here in Prague? She sings some. Anyway, she told me, I was like, I'm starting to do open mics, and she said the best way to think about it is just assume your first 10 or your first 20 are going to suck. But the 21st is going to be good. So all you're doing for the first 20 times you're on stage is sucking.
Yeah.
Instead of viewing it like, okay, I have all these hopes for it and it's gonna be perfect, and then it ends up, just go try to get through the first 20, get through the first 20 bombs. Because I think there's something where, like, okay, if you make 1,000 chairs, the God, Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, whatever, he knows that your 221st chair, like, you're gonna have 10 masterpieces in that first 1,000 chairs, but you don't know where they are.
Yeah.
So you have to make all 1,000 chairs, because you can't, like, pinpoint the chair that's going to be your masterpiece. You just have to get through all 1,000 in order to have the 5 masterpiece chairs. But, like, people who are perfectionists, it's like, maybe instead of it being the 200th chair that is great, it's the 100th chair, because they learn so much by paying attention to details. But on the other hand, they get to that 100th chair maybe in 20 years, way down the line. Whereas you got to the 200th chair in your third year because you were just always making chairs.
I think,
This is a great podcast for chair makers.
chair makers. I mean, chairs are important for breakfast, I think. It's not as fun having breakfast lying down on the ground.
No.
That could be fun, I guess. But probably not every day. I think that would be
No, I wouldn't want to. I'd like to sit and eat breakfast. Yeah.
No, I think the thing that people are missing a lot is that it's about enjoying the process and enjoying the bad parts of the process.
Do you enjoy the process?
I do enjoy the
Fucking
process.
hate the process.
But you still do it, right?
Yeah. But actually, I don't mind performing, but the process of writing and submitting stories or the process of recording music, I hate it so much. Because it's like having a baby. It's like the way women talk about being pregnant in their 8th and 9th months, where they're just like, I just wish it was over, is how I feel about it every time.
I used to be that way as well. I think I got better at it. It's more that, you're just enjoying the fact that you're able to sit down and write a song. And I think that's kind of, for me, that's the difference between a true craftsman of something, whatever that might be, chairs, and someone who ties their identity to the things they're making, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to just make chairs, you really like those chairs, and you really want to make some cool chairs, then you're probably gonna make really great chairs because you care about the thing in itself. Mm-hmm. If you want to go to a party and go like, oh yeah, I'm the greatest chair master of the world, if that's your motivation, your chairs are probably going to suck, and you're probably going to be stuck in that perfectionism loop, because you're not doing it because you want to do the thing in itself. You're doing it so that other people can see you as something.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible motivation because you cannot rely on other people for your self-satisfaction. Like, it has to come from within. And you see that a lot in music, obviously. You see
Yeah,
a lot
definitely.
I've met a lot of actors in Prague, and there's definitely 50-50 where you have people who really love the craft of acting. Like, they're just so excited to become a character in something. And you have the other ones who are just like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at
Yeah.
me. Hey, look at me. And at some point it becomes exhausting because you go, I'm right here. And I think it's the same musicians. Like, honestly, Prague is actually pretty good. I would say that the amount of people who just want to play music compared to people who want to be like successful or like cool is actually quite high. Like, the ratio of nice people, but you still get a few here and there. Not to talk bad of anyone, I'm not going to name any names, but and again, I haven't met that many, not as many in act.
This is breakfast is hell, so we can always just devote 20 minutes to shit talking people. No, and I when I say I don't enjoy the process, what I mean is bringing some. I love the process of I have an idea, I have a chord progression, and I write a song. I love that. Like, I've come to love songwriting far more than writing stories. Like, if I was a little better musician or a better singer, like, I would feel more justified in saying, you know what, I've spent a few years working on stories, but like, forget about it. I just love making music so much. Why even still write? But when I say the process, it's not the actual songwriting. It's the process of taking this finished idea and arranging it and finding a time to record it and mixing it and putting. So it's like, because I think it's important to finish things you start.
Sure.
I think that's how you actually like improve. I think if you just are always making new unfinished things, I don't think you really improve. I think it's when you try to add polish to a thing that's when the growth happens. But that's the difficult part for me. But I hear what you're saying, and I think it's true with music. And Prague music scene is great, but there's definitely like people who want to be actors. Like, they just want to be paid attention to, and that's why they make music. And it's not because they really enjoy it. I haven't come across too much of that.
No. I've come across that in other situations, but not so much in Prague.
Which is honestly a little bit frustrating for me, trying to like, because I tried to get a group together here for a while. I tried to get some people. I'm recording some stuff this month, and it's like everybody's just like, I just love playing music, man. Why would I join a group and have to do gigs or have to practice? It's like, don't you have ambitions? Don't you want to be important? You know? Don't you want people to know your name?
See, I kind of don't want people to know my name. I mean,
No?
it would be not again. Like I said,
I'm dreadfully ambitious. I'm going to be honest. I'm a horrible person. Like, when, Tom York sings "Ambition makes you look pretty ugly," every time I hear that line, I'm like, you're right, Tom. I'm pretty ugly. Like,
I mean, for me, like, it would be extremely nice to be able to make a living making music, which is extremely difficult, and also to do the thing that I want to do, which is to make people happy or feel an emotion when listening to my music. So obviously, if more people listen to that, that would be good. But I also like to have the possibility to walk to the supermarket in my pajamas and nobody knows who I am. I think.
no, I'm not talking about getting that famous. I would never want to be that famous. But I just mean like people who like music, like they've seen your name or they know who you are.
I think
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fine. Yeah.
Or you be respected. Like people respect you as a songwriter. Like, oh, this guy is a great songwriter. And so people who know songwriting are like, oh, Francesco is one of the great songwriters of our time.
See, but yes, but I think that satisfaction fades very quickly. It's not something that keeps going. That's why a lot of musicians do lots of drugs, because you have to reach that high again of people, screaming your name when you're at a concert, or like, oh, I know who you are, listen to your music. It's a good feeling, I think, but it's not sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable at all. It's just because that's not how the brain works. Your brain always wants more from other people. You always want to have more recognition. You always want to have someone else. And you see in other things as well. You see, you sometimes you have men or women who have a million partners because they're always trying to find something in someone else that they're never gonna find in someone else because they have to find it in themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, I would agree. Like, it would be nice to have people like. It would be nice if people, we talk about Paul Simon and we talk about John Prine. And I reference them as like inspiration. Like, for me, that would be like the ultimate like satisfaction for me would be someone looking at my songs and finding inspiration from them.
Mm-hmm.
That would be amazing. Like, having someone copy me, like how much I copy everyone else, because that's what you do most of the time.
Of course.
That would be quite satisfying. But that happens, and then you go, cool. You clap to yourself, and then you're still lonely. So I'm not sure if that works.
Yeah, it's a good point you make. I don't know. I mean, happiness is fleeting no matter what you do, right? I find for me, and maybe it's one of my worst impulses, that it's definitely something that, especially when I'm stressed or I'm tired, it's how I motivate myself. Like, I motivate myself with the hope that somehow, not that I will be super famous, not that like, but just that I will be respected. I will be known by people who are interested in the sort of thing I do, and I will be respected by them at some point. And like, I will have reached, and that to me is a motivation to keep going. Recognition, like, part of it is for recognition for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not a pretty side. I don't even, maybe it's a good side. I don't know, because it definitely keeps me motivated. It's better, I mean, because I don't do it just for the love of it. Like, it's not that I don't have a love of what I do and that I don't feel like I do it because I feel fulfilled. But on the other hand, there is this hope that I'll be recognized as someone will look at me the way I look at Will Oldham, Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know if that's something I should work to rid myself of, or work to just work around, or.
I think it depends on the effect that it's having on you. So if it's making your music worse, mm-hmm. because there's a part of it that you're trying to show off in some way, then maybe it's worth getting rid of. Or if it's depressing you, if it's stressing you out and giving you anxiety, where you have this goal which is very difficult to reach, and not because you're you, but just because it's difficult in general. There's a huge amount of luck and timing and
absolutely
involved, and at some point, the likelihood that any of us here in Prague that I know are gonna make it big with music, even big in a small scene, is quite small. The likelihood is very small. So if you pin all of your hopes and dreams on that happening one day and it doesn't happen, how is that gonna work? How is that gonna affect you?
See, but isn't the process of self-destruction how greatness is made?
It depends.
Like, everybody that is great almost all of them, not everyone, because John Prine, for example, didn't seem to destroy himself in the process. But most people who you look and think, man, they were great, almost kind of destroyed themselves in the process of becoming great.
I mean, it depends. Like, Paul Simon didn't. I would argue Paul McCartney didn't either. For example, to give some big names.
Yeah, Paul, dude, like that's somebody that in the last 2 or 3 years I've come to have such tremendous respect for, because that's a guy who's just like, when people say people have talent, like it usually is hard work or it's like they're smart, but Paul McCartney is one of the few people that is just like has music in his bones. Like he can make music out of thin air. And he can make any kind of music out of thin air. Like Paul McCartney too, that album, the weird synth pop one?
No. Oh yeah, the
Temporary
one.
Secret, that song.
Sure.
And I was listening to that a lot, and then Ram, like that, like what is this? Like this is the 90s in the 70s. It was crazy. No, dude, so much respect. Yeah, but I mean, you're right. Paul McCartney didn't have to destroy himself.
Yeah, you look at someone who did destroy himself, which was one of my favorite songwriters, which is Townes Van Zandt.
Yeah,
which is fairly unknown unless you're you're into that kind of folk country stuff. He destroyed himself, with alcohol, but he didn't get famous in the process.
No, and arguably, he only destroyed himself. He destroyed himself after his best works were made. Like he had that crazy run in the was it the 60s? He did
Late
all that
60s, yeah,
and then
70s.
it was after that run. It was basically after he did that great live album, the live from
Carnegie Hall.
No, not the Carnegie Hall. The one he did in Texas.
Oh yeah, I know which one you mean.
The old Houston or something.
I don't
but it's
remember
like
the
right
best
after he did that. I think it was in '73. That's when he started getting on the alcohol train, and that's when his songwriting started to dip.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. Yeah, like the more but it's almost like it's probably a consequence of how much pressure he was putting on himself in the '60s, just to like churn out great song after great song. Because the dude, he was operating on another plane. Like no one was doing that sort of thing he was doing. There's country music, but the country music at the time, he was like in a completely different direction. It's not. It's like half country, half folk.
Sure.
And there's really no, in my mind, a predecessor for it. It's just really kind of his like sui generis thing. And yeah, he definitely destroyed himself. I mean, he had mental health issues like from his whole life. He had money troubles. Yeah, I don't know.
It's funny because some people go, oh, Franz Kafka, talking about someone from Prague, died young, but at least he's famous. And he's like, well, but he died young, Like, I'm pretty sure Franz Kafka, like, if he could be alive for longer, he probably would have picked to be alive for longer, even though he probably.
Do you think he would have? I feel like he kind of hated himself and life.
I don't know. It's hard to say, right? But you do have lots of people who are famous after they're dead. Van Gogh, Kafka, I can't think of more, but there's loads. And you can't control that. Like, if you're dead and you're famous, like, okay, cool, I guess. I don't know.
But then you're immortal. Then you never die.
But you're not, though, because
you are. You never die.
Give it a few hundred years and people will not know who those people are. Maybe Van Gogh, Kafka a little bit. Sure, but like they become history, Like you have people who were super famous 1,200 years ago, writers who had died, young or whatever, and now people don't even know who they are. I think there is a drive sometimes for people who make creative things to, I'm gonna die, but my music or writing will live on and so on.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it doesn't. It might for a bit. There's only one Shakespeare, and that wasn't even that long ago. There's someone drilling next door.
I think it's probably just their kitchen. Let's see if it stops.
Oh, it's a blender of some kind.
I think, yeah.
Cool.
We can always stop this part.
Or someone's revving a very small motorcycle.
Yeah. No, it's a good point, and I love that it came right as you're making like the most like intense point of this entire conversation. No, it's something I struggled with. I struggle with it less, but I used to struggle with it like 2 or 3 years ago. I spent like a year or two just struggling with that thought, where it's like the sort of thing I'm doing is the sort of thing where like you hope that people recognize you after you're dead. for having been great, but you won't be there to see it.
Yeah.
Unless I hope that my hope for the afterlife is, if there's a God, that the afterlife is watching the consequences of your actions play out for eternity. So I hope that's what the afterlife is, because then that's like an artist's dream, because then you can see like not only your works live on, but the effect your works have on people and the improvements it makes on their lives play out, and that's your reward for having like. Because wouldn't this be a great? Because it's like the afterlife right now, as people conceive it, is like if you were good and you did good things, you get like candy. If you were bad, you did bad things, you get beaten. But then you have people like Faulkner, who was like kind of a shitty guy, but his works have impacted people so positively. Or Townes Van Zandt, who was like literally a drunk, but whose works have like impacted your and I's lives positively.
Or Picasso.
Yeah. And it's like I feel like we shouldn't be judged just on whether we were good or bad people. We should be judged on what we actually did and how the things we did helped make lives around us better or worse. So an eternity where if like heaven, everybody, this is my dream. If when I become God, this is what I'm doing.
Right.
Is you live for all eternity and you watch Earth, and your heaven is if you made the world worthwhile, if you added things to the world, you see the good consequences play out for all eternity, and you get to enjoy the fact that you added good things to the world. But if you were bad, then you have to watch all the awful ways that you made the world worse, like play out for all eternity, and just like evil upon evil. So this is my vision of the afterlife. But as you're saying, it's probably not what's actually going to happen. So what's the good of it?
Well, I mean, I'm a very, convinced atheist. So
Really?
yeah.
Okay. Why? How are you so convinced?
Well, it's not a conversation I have with myself. It's not like, because that's how people, especially people who are quite religious, they think of, where it's like every morning I wake up and go, God doesn't exist, therefore. For me, it's more like, it's not a question I ask myself. Like, it is not part of my thought process at all. Like my decisions, my life, my whatever. When I'm trying, you have the conversation in your head. You go like, what about this and that? And some people involve those kinds of questions, but they're just not part of my thought process. And
So you just could care less whether there's a God.
yeah, it is not. It does not interest me very much.
You don't
at all.
fear death and punishment, and
Not really, no.
how not?
Because again, I don't think there's anything after. I think we are lucky enough to experience consciousness in an extremely short amount of time, geologically and astronomically speaking. So you do your best when you're here, and with your humanity and your flaws, because you're a human, and you've evolved from bacteria in a very long time. But yeah, I don't think there's anything afterwards. I think it's just dust in the wind.
I think the most frightening thought is the idea of just an immediate and complete secession of consciousness.
Sure.
Like the thought that my consciousness might just be done.
Yeah.
Like a candle put out.
Yeah, and in this moment, you're feeling the chair. Talking about chairs, you're feeling the chair that you're sitting on, and then at some point you're not anymore. And that is, I'm not saying that like that's not terrifying, because being a conscious, or at least we think we're conscious being, then the ability to not be conscious is something that you cannot understand.
Yeah.
Right, so that's quite what's scary.
But the thing is, you're not even there not to be conscious. Like it's
exactly.
People think about it in terms of like, well, I can't feel the chair, or I won't have thoughts anymore. But
It will
you're
not
not
exist.
there anymore
No.
not to feel the thoughts. It's like because sometimes when I'm I'm trying to fall asleep at night is when I can actually wrap my head around it. Like, not that I will not have sensations anymore, but that there won't even be a me. Like, it's not that the verb disappears from the sentence, is that there is no subject, which is it's God, I can't get around it. It's It's absolutely terrifying. And it's like, it doesn't help to think about it, because if that's how it is, that's how it is. And so you just have to resign yourself to it, I guess.
I mean, we're all gonna die, right? So there's not much. It could be tomorrow. Could be in 50 years. Like,
Sounds so peaceful. See, I've almost died a few times, so that's part
Sure,
of the reason that like.
I was in
Yeah.
the hospital a few times for sure. But
Okay, so maybe we've just like, I came away from almost dying like, fuck, it's like that's it,
Now, for me, it was was like, okay, I want to live. Like there are things I haven't experienced yet, and I want to experience.
Okay.
Like I was once hospitalized with pneumonia, and at first they thought it was cancer, like lung cancer.
Oh wow.
Because it was kind of it showed up weird. Because usually pneumonia, you have one lung full of fluid or like half full of fluid, and it's like very clear. But some different bacteria that you can get, they form different kinds of like pockets of liquid. And so it looked like they were at first that they were like little cancer things here and there, which, you know, if your cancer in your lungs is everywhere, then you're pretty much screwed, right?
Right.
And so actually I went to oncology first until, you know, they figured out that I did not have cancer. And I was like, you know, early 20s. And I was still a virgin. And I was like, I don't want to die. Like, come on.
But somebody would pity fuck somebody with cancer. Like, you don't have to die a virgin if you have cancer.
Sure. But, you know.
I don't want donations. I don't want money to pay for my treatments. I just want somebody to have sex.
Yeah, because, you know, I studied engineering, so, you know, I was just surrounded by men mostly.
You studied engineering?
I studied engineering, yeah,
Oh, wow.
a long time ago. And, you know, you get out of engineering and you haven't talked to a woman basically in 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was like, this cannot be it for me. I need to
Right.
do more. And so, yeah. So, no, again, you know, I have some part of my family is quite religious, and, you know, that people die because people die all the time. Well, not all the time, but some of the time. And for them, it's like, you know, oh, one day I'm going to see them again. Right. And for them, that gives them kind of like alleviates their anxieties and stuff.
Right.
For me, it's the opposite. Like, I know I'm not going to see them again. And that gives me peace. Because I'm not going to go like, oh, if I'm a bad person or a good person, then we might not end up in the same place and blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's it. You know, like, remember them, enjoy the good times you've had with them, and often bad times as well. But I don't, like, that's not something that scares me. Like, for some people in my family, when you talk about this stuff, they'll be terrified that they don't get to see them again. For me, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really care if I see people again. That's never been a thing for me. I mean, because it's not like I don't care about people. I actually care about people. Like, I do. I care about people, but it's like I can accept that when people are gone, they're gone. Like, I don't need an afterlife where I see people again because I had the time. You know, it's.
Is it enough time though? Some people it's not enough time. Yeah.
But thing is, like, even the people you're closest to, how often do you see them? How often do you actually talk to them? Like, you know, it's always one of those things where I was back in the States during COVID. But, like, when I go home from the States and I've been in Prague for a while, then people are like, oh, we love to see you, da 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 da. But, like, after a month, that wears off. And then it's like, oh, Jacob's
Here.
He's around.
Yeah.
I'll see him if I see him, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really how we feel about, like, we like people, but they're not intrinsic to who we are, our identity.
Yeah, which
And our
goes back
happiness.
to the previous point, which is that if you base your happiness about music on other people, then that's the same thing, you know? Like, it's the same thing. You have your first gig, and, like, all of your friends show up. You know, all your friends show up if you invite them, obviously, if you're not scared to invite them. And it's like, it's great. And then they stop showing up because they've seen you. You know, if you do it regularly,
Yeah.
like, I mean, and I understand because, like, if someone was playing music or doing plays and, like, I've seen him a bunch of times, like, sometimes they go, like, actually, today I want to go do something else, you know? Or, like, I have other plans. That's normal. I don't think necessarily means that they care about you less. It's just...
No, well, and there's a ceiling to how much other people care about you.
Sure.
And I think it's important to respect that. And I think it's important to also, like, I found this with relationships in my life where it's like, okay, if this person is not as actively interested in seeing me or in keeping touch with me as I am interested in keeping touch with them, then, like, sure, I'll put in a little extra work and try to keep the relationship strong. But sometimes you guys just, like, they're not interested in me much anymore. So I just, like, it's not worth the work to keep this relationship going. Letting some things... No, I think there are people who start to care about you less, or they're busy with their own lives, which is fine. Like, nobody has to be close to you, but I do think that, like, I don't know, you should make some effort to support your friends. Like, you can't see them every concert, you can't see them every show, you can't call them or write them every week, but you should every once in a while check in or try to meet up or see how they're doing. And if you don't do that, or one party's not making that effort, then fuck them. I don't know.
You see, I agree up to a point where I used to feel very hurt when I was younger, where people would just kind of disappear from your life. Especially if you move country. Like, some people are really bad at keeping up people who are not right in front of them.
Yeah.
But
Especially because you've moved here from Italy, so...
no, I moved here from the UK. I was living in the UK.
You were living in the UK before this.
Yeah. But the reality is that sometimes the people you keep up with are not the ones you expect to keep up with. Like, sometimes there are friends who are like slightly more tangential than your main friends, and then somehow those are the ones you keep in touch with. But also, like, it comes in waves. Like, sometimes you grow apart because, you know, you start doing different things, you get different hobbies, you get different groups of friends, which is fine. You know, like, you don't have to do the same things as your friends all the time. And then sometimes you converge again and you go like, hey, I missed hanging out with you. And then that happens again. It's like, it's never like 1 or 0, right? It can change over time. So one of the things that I've got better at with age, which is going like, okay, so right now we're not hanging out much, but maybe one day. So I'm not going to, block them on Facebook and tell them to fuck off.
Well, no, you
right?
shouldn't do that. I'm not saying that you should be like, block them and tell them to go fuck themselves. But you can just like, stop caring about them.
Sure. I mean, you just accept that, like, maybe they're just not going to be around that much.
Yeah.
And yeah. I think, one of my life philosophies is to give people a chance to shine, right? Whether it is friends, people you don't know. Because often you meet people and they're shy. Maybe they're having a bad day or whatever. And sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I met this person, but like, I don't know, Nobody owes you to show themselves to you and how amazing or cool they are. I find that it is my job to try to give them the chance to show it to me. And then sometimes you do, and you find out the person actually is really boring. Which is, it happens. Like sometimes you meet someone and they go like, oh, so what do you do? Like, oh, I watch, I work and then I watch Netflix, and then you find out that's actually, that is it, and...
I know this exact moment and this exact realization where like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But sometimes you have people who maybe like, they have different circumstances in life, but like actually they have a lot to say. Actually, they have a lot of interesting things to talk about and ideas to share and just very good company. And maybe at first they were too shy to show that to you. And I think it's important to give people a chance and to keep trying a little bit and keep that up. Because, it's hard, It's hard to relate with people because we're all afraid of rejection and being vulnerable. But of course, if you give someone a chance to be vulnerable a lot and they never do, then at some point, okay, cool. Well, you never share, so.
Well, and this is something. Maybe you can enlighten me because you seem to have some insight on this. It's like there's 2 people I've met that have been quite fascinating to me because they're the opposite of this. One of them, the person I was seeing last night, she loves writing. She just like read every book that exists.
Okay.
She knows multiple languages, but like. She like has a rich emotional life, a very interesting person to talk to, but she just wants to have a job. Like she doesn't have any artistic ambitions. She just like she wants to have a job and a job she's happy with. And then there was an American here I knew like 2 years ago. She moved away, but she like got up at 4 a.m. to go for a run every day. And it was like consumed all the art, there like books, movies, etc. Loved music, like really had a good appreciation of it. She was a great singer, but like for her it was just like she just taught. She was just she's a grade school teacher, and like that's as far as her ambitions go. I don't understand how you can be a really deep person, like a really complex, interesting person, and like be satisfied with just having like a normal job and a normal life. I don't.
Well, because I think the idea of quote unquote success that we have in our society, in Europe and in the US, probably around the world at this point, is not the only definition you can have of success. In fact, I think it's kind of a toxic definition, because what is success? It is like capitalistic success. It's to make money, to be recognized, but more to be recognized is to make the money that you get when you get recognized. When as an individual person, when you look at your impact on the world, you can define success in many other ways. You can define, I was successful because I was mostly a positive influence on the people around you, right? And that might be kids at grade school, right? And that could be extremely satisfying to you. It could be as a nurse, right? You could be the most incredible nurse, but you're quote unquote still a nurse, as if that's not impressive.
Yeah.
Which of course it is. But that's what gives satisfaction. Like, it doesn't have to be like, no one can be Mick Jagger, right? There's only one. Like, nobody can be that famous. And again, like I said, it doesn't necessarily make you happy. And but you see that in aging rock stars. Like, I forget what's the singer of The Who, Roger Daltrey, right? He has a fish farm. Like, like, he's in his 60s, 70s, and he's he's played massive stages around the world, and all he wants to do is raise some fish and go fishing.
Yeah.
I think you realize that spend time with his family and his grandkids and so on. That makes sense to me. I think some people just have realized that quite early and are happy with their circumstance. I think it's unfortunate that some of these jobs, which are about caring for people, are extremely underpaid for the amount of value they bring to society, just because they don't bring much monetary value, but they bring a lot of value to society, right? Like education and healthcare and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, my day job is as a web developer, and the offers you get, the highest offers you get for jobs are the most useless ones. Are about getting Estee Lauder to sell more products to make women insecure,
Yeah.
That makes money, so that's valuable and that's successful. But again, I think you can define successful in many different ways. So that's how I think those people are. Just, you love books, but like, maybe you write a book, but does it matter to you if you become famous because of it? Maybe it was just fun to write the book itself.
People who are content scare me. They freak me out, man. I don't understand it.
I think it's a skill. I think it's something you can train.
Being content.
I think so. Yeah, I think.
You don't think-
Maybe you have to fail really hard for you to realize that actually it's fine to not be that great.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's. I have my theory is just that there are some people who are constitutionally content, and there's some people who are constitutionally discontented, and that it's that half of humanity is condemned to be happy no matter what they do, and the other half of humanity is content to be unhappy no matter what they do. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we've been at it for a while. Is there
Sure.
any last note you want to give the world?
No, just thank you for having me on, and
Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
if anyone else wants to follow me on Instagram, where I post mostly pictures of food.
Yeah. What are your socials? What are your how do we follow your music and your?
Well, I
and
mean,
your
on Facebook it's just my name, so it's Francesco Buziello, and on Instagram you can find me with just my name, or it's my whatever it's called, short name.
Yeah.
What do they call him?
A handle.
A handle.
Your
there you go.
Instagram handle.
It's Fra Buziello Music. You
Okay.
can find me there, and yeah, I mostly post pictures of the bread I bake at home. But if you're
Okay.
into that kind of thing,
I'll put those into the episode description. Cool. All right. Awesome.